like to share a story that you may not have seen that was in the Sacramento Bee a couple of days ago. On New Year's Eve, there was a Sac State professor who found himself in no shape to drive late at night. So he sensibly left his van in the car park and walked home. As he was wobbling along, he was stopped by a policeman. "What are you doing out here at 4 o'clock in the morning, sir?" asked the police officer. "Well, I'm on my way to a lecture," answered the professor. "And who on earth in his right mind is going to be giving a lecture at this time on New Year's Eve?" inquired the constable sarcastically. "Well, my wife," the professor said. Yeah, they say laughter is the best medicine, so that's the medical talk. So I hope last Sunday, for all of us who could be here, that we enjoyed our annual ringing out the old and toasting the new with our burning bowl ceremony. Or if you didn't, perhaps you just toasted out the old on Tuesday night, like the good professor did, and brought in the new. The burning bowl ceremony that we did last week is a sacred ritual that honors the changing of the year. And if we were here, or if you've ever done a burning bowl ceremony, you know that we write on our little piece of paper all those things that we want to release, and we commit it to fire. And the fire represents God, cleansing away everything that did not serve us. And therefore, and clearing away those things which does not serve us, we make way for the new. So my question to us is, what is it that we want to manifest for ourselves in 2020? What did we write in our little letter, if we did write a letter for ourselves, about what we expect to have presenced in this year by this time next year? And more importantly, what is our job in the process of this manifestation, of manifesting the things that we want for ourselves in our lives? What can we do? What tools can we use to co-create with God all the possible good that we can stand? Not just today, but for every day, for the rest of our lives. So as I was thinking about this, I thought, that at first glance, there's probably a couple of different ways that we can do this. One is I can just turn over to God entirely the responsibility for creating what's going to happen to me for the rest of my life. Not my will, but thy will. We can allow God to decide what our lives will be. And that's a perfectly reasonable way to go about it, because God is always desiring only our highest good, right? So we can expect, if we let God be in charge of everything, without our saying what it should be, we can nonetheless expect, as the 18th century German philosopher Leibniz put it, the best of all possible worlds to show up. So we might call this the passive approach to manifestation. And at first glance, of course, this, like I said, could seem to be perfectly valid. The second option is to consciously and intentionally work with God to create the lives that we are actively choosing to have. To consciously co-create with God the things that are going to show up in our lives. So I said that these appear to be two separate approaches, but are they? After all, they both will require us to let go and let God, consciously or unconsciously. But I think veteran New Thought students in this room will immediately spot the conundrum, don't we? The conundrum is this, that we are each the agent of manifestation of everything that's already showing up in our lives. As we sang in our opening hymn, we make our own world wherever we are. We make our own world wherever we are. So whether we refrain from conscious intention, seeming to allow God complete authority over our futures, or whether we buckle down to actively discerning our desires and speaking them with our words into existence, in both cases, the fundamental principles of manifestation apply. Because the truth is, we cannot not manifest our realities. We cannot not make our own world. We are always manifesting, whether we're aware of it or not, because we were made in the image and likeness of our Creator. And so, therefore, we are also creators. So as we know, one of our basic unity principles is thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. So notice it doesn't say thoughts held in mind sometimes produce after their kind. Our thoughts are always, in every moment and in every place, producing after their kind. So the only way to avoid manifesting is to stop thinking. And while sometimes with the crazy thoughts that go on in my head, I wish I could do that, that's just not going to happen. So I thought it would be good to start the new year by taking a fresh look at the laws of manifestation. If we want to live intentionally, if we want to consciously co-create our lives with God, if we want to work directly to make sure that everything that shows up for the rest of our lives is what we would most highly value and appreciate, then it makes sense to take a look at this process of manifestation. There's value in understanding ourselves. There's value in spending more time on the journey to inner space, or as Charles Fillmore put it, going to headquarters. There's value in understanding and appreciating the law of manifestation. So just a word about mind process. So let's make a distinction, like Dr. Katie does in Lessons in Truth, between divine mind and human mind. So unlike divine mind, which is everywhere and always present, our human mind is, by evolutionary design, divided into two regions, the conscious and the subconscious. Now, by many estimates, as much as 90% of our human mind is active beneath the level of our awareness. Picture an iceberg. And most of the iceberg is below the water level. That's like our subconscious. Things are happening in our subconscious all the time without our noticing them. The functioning of our bodies, the churning of our emotions, the meandering streams of our mental processing, all are active in our subconscious, doing their thing without our paying them the slightest attention. This is going on right now. As we're sitting here, all of these things are happening even as in our conscious minds we're not. You're paying attention to me. And of course, this division between consciousness and subconsciousness is necessary because we couldn't navigate the circumstances of our daily life if we had to pay attention to every single thing that was going on in our organism. Imagine having to be aware of all the functions of our body, all the functions of our mind, and all the functions of our soul all at the same time. Even trying it makes my head hurt. So mercifully, the intelligent designer of the universe engineered a mind for us that can handle a myriad of tasks without being overwhelmed. Yet at the same time, the boundary between the conscious and the subconscious is porous enough to allow subconscious material to show up and presence itself in our conscious when we need it, and sometimes when we think we don't need it. The experience of our lives over time demonstrates to us, if we pay the slightest bit of attention, the amount of material that lives in our subconscious. So we know it's there, we have the experience of it, and it's something that we need to take into account when we consider the law of manifestation. So Charles Fillmore has a whole chapter in his book, Keep a True Lent, on the subconscious. And this is one of the things that he says that I recommend to us, the entire chapter. He says, the subconscious mind is the vast, silent realm that lies back of the conscious mind and lies between it, the conscious mind, and the superconscious, which is another way of naming divine mind, superconscious divine mind. This subconscious may be called the sensitive plate of mind. Its true office is to receive impressions from the superconscious, from the divine, and to reproduce them upon the canvas of our conscious mind. In other words, to bring divine thoughts into our conscious awareness. Man, however, having lost the consciousness of the indwelling Father as an ever-present reality, has reversed the process and impresses the subconscious from the conscious mind. In this way, the former is made to register impressions of both good and evil, according to the thought held in conscious mind at the time the impression is made. And since it is the purpose and the nature of the subconscious mind to reproduce, or to throw upon the screen of the conscious, the exact impression that it has received, the conscious mind is thus made to express two sets of opposing ideas. No enduring structure, Mr. Fillmore says, can be built by one who is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. So in other words, Mr. Fillmore is saying that in our current stage of human evolution, the subconscious is where all inputs, both sensory, that is from our sense awareness, and intuitive, that is from divine mind, are first received. We take them in, as it were, neutrally. We take them into our psychic inventory, and they reside there in the darkness until, for whatever reason, they arise into our awareness. So the critical point I want to make is that we manifest the lives we lead through the thoughts we hold in our entire mind, not just in our conscious mind, in our entire mind. We could now say thoughts held in our entire mind, the combined conscious and subconscious realms produce after their kind. And if these two realms are not in alignment with one another, if they are not in harmony, then the results we produce in our lives will regularly fall short of our conscious desires. This happens, as Mr. Fillmore just said, because the conscious mind is thus made to express two sets of opposing ideas. And so, as we set out to create the lives we consciously desire, as we set out to live intentionally in connection with the indwelling but often subconscious spirit living within us, we must focus our attention on the state of our subconscious mind. This is particularly important because, as we often discussed in the past year, the subconscious harbors direct memory of everything we have ever experienced. Remember, it's taking in, it's inventorying. Everything that's ever happened is recorded in the memory, living in the subconscious. And in particular, it offers shelter to every trauma, hurt, experience of abuse that has ever happened to us. And it not only contains all those unhappy and painful experiences, it also holds our reactions against them, our defenses against them. So as long as I am unaware of these deeply embedded experiences and reaction formations, I am at their mercy. As thoughts held in subconscious mind, they are producing results in my life after their kind. So I had a powerful and overwhelming reminder of how this happens this year, and let me see if I can illustrate this through personal experience. A close friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, last spring just started behaving negatively toward me for reasons that I did not know. He became critical, sarcastic, angry. And at first I just dismissed this as if it wasn't happening. I was like, huh? I just shrugged it off. But over time, the hurtful behavior continued. And eventually I found myself becoming defensive. And then I found myself avoiding him. When he walked into a room, I could feel myself tensing up and becoming agitated inwardly. Now, this was happening in the context of the 12-step program I participate in, Adult Children of Alcoholics. And as I brought this finally, as it dawned on me, this was something, there was a change going on that I needed to pay attention to. I began to work with my sponsor. And as I worked with her, she helped me become aware that my friend's behavior was mirroring my relationship with my father when I was a teenager. Now, my dad owned a little printing company, and as I was in high school, I would come in after work and do work in the shop. And my experience in working for my dad was I could never do anything right. In my memory, my dad would criticize how I did my work, and he rarely explained to me how he wanted it done. And he wouldn't listen to my explanation of why I was doing it the way I was doing it. So whatever my dad was trying to tell me, what I heard in my teenage defensive brain was, "You're incompetent and you're a disappointment to me, son." And so my experience at the time was to withdraw and to avoid my father as much as possible. So I became aware, as this memory resurfaced with the help of my sponsor, that my friend's behavior toward me, which was critical, I heard it as critical, it was triggering memories and defenses from my adolescent experience that turns out were still alive and living in my alive and well in my subconscious, of which I, after more than 50 years, was blissfully unaware. That experience had been living in my subconscious without my being aware of it for 5 decades. But what that meant was I had no effective adult response to my friend's behavior. I simply reverted to my adolescent defensiveness. And like I did with my dad, I became angry, withdrawn, and non-communicative. So at the conscious level, I was bewildered and unhappy. And the story I told myself was that there was something wrong with my friend and there was nothing I could do about it except pull away. Even though before this change in behavior, my friend was loyal, cheerful, supportive, fun to be with, taught me a lot. The friendship I thought I had was no longer what I was getting. So in other words, my conscious mind was not in alignment with my subconscious mind. My experience at the conscious level did not cohere with my experience at the subconscious level. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. What was showing up in my life was, as is always the case, perfectly reflecting my interior conflict. So it took some time and a lot of prayer work. I had to deny that what I was seeing as the condition was the real condition. And I had to affirm the presence of love and acceptance in this relationship before the truth emerged into consciousness. Once I became aware, however, that how my friend's behavior triggered subconscious memories and reactions from my unresolved teenage relationship with my father, I was actually now prepared intentionally to activate the golden key. Remember, the golden key is I shift my focus from the condition to God. I release to God all the stuff that I cannot handle on my own. And I no longer let the condition be the God. So I did this by setting a conscious intention to have healing and connection with my friend. So I set my affirmation. I intend to be in loving connection with my friend. I intend to be in loving connection with my friend. So this is the power of intention. When we set and speak explicit and conscious intentions, we are asking God for what we want to show up in our lives, for what we want to replace old behaviors and beliefs, just like we did in the burning bowl, and we burned them up. So in essence, we are now using our subconscious mind for what Mr. Fillmore says is its foundational purpose, the real power of the subconscious mind. Remember what he said. It's to receive impressions from the superconscious, from the divine, and to reproduce them upon the canvas of the conscious mind. That is to say, we clear the way for divine intuition to come to our aid. When we use the golden key, that is, when we shift our attention from the problem to God, we are opening all of our faculties of mind, conscious and subconscious, to our divine intuition, which is how, as Dr. Katie says, we realize spirit. We make spirit real in our experience. So in these moments, the superconscious, the subconscious, and the conscious all align in total harmony. We become, as we sang in our meditation hymn, free and unlimited right now. And we know this not as an intellectual fact, but as a felt aha. The truth hits us almost as a physical blow of realization. So, like in the situation I was sharing about my friend that occurred last year, I became aware that when I became aware that I was re-experiencing something that had happened between me and my father, I immediately had clarity and I immediately had a sense of peace. I felt a relaxation, as it said in today's daily word, and almost a giddiness in my chest. Because this is how the peace that surpasses understanding presences itself. So when we set out to live our lives intentionally, we make every day like a New Year's experience. Like with the burning bowl, here's what we can do. Every night, I can consciously let go of everything that did not serve me in that day. Before I turn in, I can review my day. I can make a list of all those things that did not serve me, and I can release them to God. I can actually literally, if I want to, write them down on a piece of paper and burn them up in a bowl, as long as I have the appropriate airflow and so forth. And I don't burn them right where the smoke detector is. And then in the morning when I wake up, I can set my intentions for that new day and turn them over to God so that He can assist me in manifesting those intentions and making those intentions become real, in realizing the Spirit within. We live our lives, one day at a time. So one day at a time, we become ever more proficient in deepening our conscious contact with the divine presence within us. We focus on intentionally, rather than unconsciously, manifesting the life we want to live, one day at a time. For when we do this intentionally, we also bring something else into our lives. We activate our direct experience of God's exquisite and never-failing love for us. God's exquisite and never-failing desire for us to experience only our highest good in our life. So this year, 2020, let us begin, and if we do this regularly, let us renew our capacity to set our intentions for our own lives consciously. Let us set an intention to become aware when negativity arises from our subconscious, to be able to learn more about what lives in our subconscious, to be intentional about healing so that whatever stored trauma, stored pain, unhealed material still lives there, we can bring it to the light so that we can apply the golden key and bring it to God. One of the most amazing gifts that we have as human beings is that we are not bound to our past if we don't want to be. We can be if we want to be, but we are not automatically bound to our past. And that Jesus, our way shower, gave us the tools for liberating ourselves from the sorrows and burdens of the past. And as Emmett Fox says, it's through application of the golden key. So I'd like to offer us an affirmation for us to begin this process in 2020. And here's the first sentence of that affirmation. Every day I start my life anew. Every day I start my life anew. Together, every day I start my life anew. I tell God what I want. I tell God what I want, and I let go and get out of the way. I let go and get out of the way. Every day I start my life anew. I tell God what I want and let go and get out of the way. So I'd like to close this by affirming this in song together. And let's now sing the song that we started the service with, number 359. We make our own world with new ears and new eyes. 359, shall we rise? Thank you, God, for a new world. Thank you, God, for a new year every day.